Hello, this is Paul Humber, and it is about pathetic Lucy Laetoli pseudoscience. That's a picture of Mary Leakey there to the left. And she was a British paleoanthropologist who unearthed the famous Laetoli footprints. You can see the picture down below. Reportedly, she said, quote, "I am still not convinced that the Laetoli hominids and Lucy belong to the same species." And I agree with her. In December of 1996, she said, quote, "All those trees of life with their branches of our ancestors, that's a lot of nonsense." And I agree with her there as well. Now here's a picture of a map from Philadelphia. I live in Philadelphia, and that's Chicago over there. It's 760 miles. I've driven that, made that trip many times. If I told you that I found ancient fossils, bones in my backyard that match footprints in Chicago, would you appropriately raise a skeptical eyebrow, especially if I added that I had no significant fossil foot bones? Get ready for the next map. Now here's another map on the left. There are two red dots, one there and one there. Now I drew in, there's a faint green line there between the red dots. The upper dot is where footless Lucy was found, about 1,000 miles south. That's much more than the distance between Philadelphia and Chicago. The Laetoli tracks were found. In other words, separated by 1,000 miles. Many evolutionists believe, and I stress that, that's faith, or guess, the two are related. I believe skeptical eyebrows should be raised here also. Science has made huge mistakes in the past. The so-called junk DNA, which isn't junk, Haeckel's fraudulent embryos, Nebraska Man, Piltdown Man. Early on was discovered by creationists to be a fraud. There's even a book that was written. But eventually evolutionists came around in the 1950s to admit that it was a fraud. Supposed vestigial organs, they're not vestigial. Lobotomy science, Lombroso's throwbacks, Miller's life tar experiment, putting Oda Benga into a zoo with chimps, rejecting Semmelweis, that it's important to wash hands before going from one patient to another, and doctors resisted him, and even the 2020 pandemic debacle. In Johnson's book, and Maitland A. Eady was also sort of a co-author with him, I guess. It's called Blueprints, and I have the copy. We read on pages 344 to 5, quote, "Mary Leakey rejected it out of hand. She did not approve of their lumping her Laetoli fossils with Don's Hadar ones." In other words, Donald Johanson was in the Hadar area, the location where Lucy was found. She also insisted that no Australopithecines should be placed on the Homo line, in other words, the line of mankind. Nevertheless, the authors went on to offer guesses that the, quote, hominid footprints are the same as would have been made by Lucy if she had had flesh on her bones. They are also the same as those modern humans would make. They confirm the existence of an upright walking hominid at that great age is the crowning gem in their paleoanthropological diadem. Lucy's bones said she walked upright. The Laetoli footprints confirm it, and thus feet clinch the unity of the Laetoli and the Ethiopian fossils. In other words, even though they're 1,000 miles separated, but all of this is false, and it's got all kinds of problems associated with it. Now, was Johanson himself wanting to put the diadem that he mentioned on his own head? Could there be a competitive bias here? The evolutionary community seems to have bought into this guesswork of his hook, line, and sinker. This non-science is pathetic. Lucy was an ape, and probably extinct, and humans walked the Laetoli tracks. The chronology is also flawed. Radiometric dating, for example, makes unprovable assumptions. Was there no contamination, for example? And what was the ratio of the original sample, and so on and so forth? The humans that made the Laetoli tracks will one day stand before Creator Christ, as will both you and I. Lucy, also known as Australopithecus afarensis, apparently had, or have if it's plural, curved fingers and toes that were well suited for grasping and climbing in trees. Now comes a huge untruth. Johanson said on page 363, and I'm quoting, this is a lie that I'm going to point out, although humans may look entirely different from chimpanzees and gorillas, those differences are superficial. Where it counts in the genes, all three are 99% identical. False, false, false. Chimps and humans are more like 95% similar in their DNA. Cats are 90. Did humans come from cats? It should not be surprising that all animals on Earth share some similarity, for humans, cats, pigs, and rats all breathe air, eat, see, hear, reproduce, and digest. Creator Christ was the common designer of all animals. Cell phones were designed by man, but that does not mean that all cell phones have a common ancestor, only in a metaphorical sense. A common ancestor with a tail, and there's sort of a telephone with a wire attached to it and so on. It's sort of a little bit of a pun there. Jesus is the creator of all feet, including Lucy's and the Laetoli feet, you and me. I love him. He went to the cross to save me. Bow to him in humble prayer if you haven't already done so, asking him to save you.